Hey everybody, Mungo Darkmatter here, and today I thought I'd do a tutorial on VCV, which is a piece of software that emulates a Eurorack modular analog synthesizer. And you can explain how to basically set up a basic synth on it and kind of what to look out for. So I'm going to try to give you a little bit of the basics of the signal chains in an analog synthesizer as well, and hopefully this will make things clearer, because it is kind of a little bit complex when you don't know certain things. Once you know it, like anything else, it seems intuitively obvious. So let's start off here with the VCO. The VCO is a voltage controlled oscillator, and it's the main component of an analog synthesizer. And the difference between a modular analog synthesizer and just a regular analog synthesizer is a modular analog synthesizer, has patches in it, and you can put modules in. So you could replace the VCO with just an analog synthesizer or synthesizer where that was just one piece, let us say. The oscillator, you couldn't pull the oscillator out and change it, at least not easily. And so that's the advantage to modular synthesizers. So anyway, as you can see, this is a basic module. It's the oscillator, the main module that you need, and it creates the tone. You'll see there are like switches and dials on here, and depending on the module and the manufacturer, there'll be different switches and different dials. Some of them are going to be similar. Also, in lieu of dials or switches, sometimes there are more jacks. And to give you an example of this, I'm going to pull down this other VCO right here. Now, these are both standard plugins. When you initially install VCV, these are like the base plugins from VCV. And so I'm not using any third-party plugins in this demonstration. So you'll see on this VCO1, and the VCO1 and VCO2, it's just the label they have to indicate that this is a different VCO. So it's kind of a name, it's just a generic name for it. So anyway, if you look at VCO1, you'll see at the bottom there's 4 jacks, and these jacks are SIN, which is sine wave, TRI, which is triangle. The next one is saw, and the final one is SQR, which is square wave. These are the basic types of waves, as we'll see in a second, that you use in an analog synthesizer. One of the things that make the plugs or the jacks on modular synthesizers a little bit confusing is a lot of times the thing is abbreviated, or the label is abbreviated, because there's not much space. So there are 2 different types of signals in a signal chain, or 2 different types of signal chains in an analog synthesizer. One of them, of course, is the audio chain, which produces the tones that we use to make music with. The other one is called the control voltage, or CV. And CV controls different levels, or triggers different things, as we're going to see as we go along. So those are the 2 main things to remember when you're doing analog synthesizers and putting them together. You have a signal chain, and then you have a command voltage chains, and the command voltage is used to as a control circuit. It's kind of like MIDI, which is musical instrument device interface that you use with computers to control instruments and musical instruments and instruments that have a MIDI interface on them. All right, so I'm going to move this one thing back out of the way. This top row is just a selection that I pulled out for the demonstration. It wouldn't normally be up there. To get additional modules, you would actually right-click on the rack, and it will bring up the modules. Oh, didn't want to do that. Get rid of this. You would right-click, and we'll bring up all the modules you have. If we click on VCV, this is all the VCV modules, and this is what comes standard with it. So there's a lot that you can work with without downloading extra modules, and there are a bunch of modules that are free that you can download from third parties, and some may cost you money, but there's like so many that are free. You could pretty much find everything that you want, and this collection right here will pretty much do everything you want. But it's nice to be able to replace some of these things with other modules, because other modules may be controlled in slightly different ways, or create slightly different sounds, and something you can experiment with. All right, so finally we have the VCO right here, which is the main oscillator, and I'm going to bring down the scope down here. Now what the scope does is it will show us what the waves are like, or the waveforms are like. So I'm going to plug sine wave into this, X1 or X in. There's also a Y in, so you can have two different signals going in at once and compare them. So what I'm going to do is, if I turn the frequency down on this, the sine wave will spread out a little bit. We'll bring the frequency back up, and I'm going to adjust this time control right here on the scope to widen out the sine wave so you can see it a little better for demonstration purposes. So this is the sine wave. If we move over one to the triangular wave, you'll see it looks kind of triangular. The saw wave looks like saw teeth, so it kind of has a triangle on one side and a straight down side on the wave. And then if you go over here, you have a square wave right here. Now if I bring back VCO number 2 again real quick, and I plug it into the out here, you see this only has one out, but we have this knob here, which is wave, so we can go from sine wave all the way over to the square wave, and we can go in between the waves and shape our waves accordingly. So it gives us a little bit extra flexibility, and that is one reason why you might want to use a different VCO or a different VCO from a third party. Let me disconnect that again, get rid of this, pop that up there. We're going to leave this in the sine wave for now, because we're just demonstrating how to set up the basic synthesizer, and we've gone through a lot of background at this point, but that's all important. A lot of demos leave that out, and I'm trying to give you kind of a basic understanding, so as you watch other videos, whether I do them or somebody else does them, you'll have kind of an idea of what to look for. All right, so this does us a little good to have just a sine wave here without getting some sort of sound to it. So in order to get sound, we're going to pull down this module right here, and this is the audio module, and this actually will take our signal and put it out to the speakers of our computer. There are a couple of little boxes you can click in here to change parameters. The top parameter, we have it set to direct sound, but you could use ASIO, and if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. For now, just use direct sound. That's probably going to be the one that you'll want to use. If we go down here, we have speakers or headphones. I can also put it to default device if I want, and I think I'm going to do that right now. Default device is probably the one you should have it to. You may not have as many audio interfaces as I do, or you may have more. Who knows? It depends. If you do music and other things, you end up with more interfaces for different things. And even if you look down here, you'll see some of these are actually the interfaces for HDMI that go to the monitors that I have, so that happen to have speakers in them. So try not to get confused by that. You'll see these are the jacks to the devices. This light indicates that the first and the second are lit up. If you have a more complex audio interface that you're using, you might have 2 and 3, or I mean 3 and 4, or 4 and 6, or 7 and 8. They may all be lit up, or whatever. So whatever one's lit up is the one that you use. Probably is going to be 1 and 2. I would just keep it to default device and try to make things simple as possible for you. But this is a key to get this set up so that you can actually hear the tone. Now the way that we can test this is working is I'm going to hit Control and click on sine wave, and that will give us a second cable out of it. And then I'm going to pull that to the first one. And we've got a tone now, just a basic tone. I'm going to pull that off for now just to get rid of the tone for now, because it's hard to hear me when the tone's going on. So that's a solid tone, and we can't adjust the amplitude or the volume using this unless we put in another module, which is the VCA. The VCA is a voltage controlled amplifier. Now right here you'll see this is on this control, this square up here doubles as a audio meter and a volume, and so I can pull the volume up and down using this just by clicking on it and dragging. I'm going to once again, actually this time I'm going to go to the click on the output or input jack here and pull it over to the sine. That's the other way you can do it. If you already have multiple or another cable in a jack that you want to put more in, you can always click on the jack to the component you want to drag it to first and then drag it back, or you can, as I said, hit Control and add a cable to it. All right, so what I'm going to do now is this is the output right here, and I'm going to put it to this first thing right here. There we go. So if I move this volume, you can see that the volume goes down, and we can turn it off entirely. But that doesn't do us a great deal of good either, because we still have a solid tone. We can just change the volume on it. We want to be able to trigger it. And in order to trigger it, one of the things we need is an ADSR, which stands for attack, decay, sustain, and release. And that's a basis of analog synthesis too. Whenever you have a note, you have an attack, how long it takes to get up to kind of the full volume. The decay, which is how long it takes for the note to decay at the end. The sustain, which is how long the note stays at its peak level. And the release, which also is at the end, is how long it takes the note continues to echo on and such. So those are 4 variables you can change, and you can see over here on the left on this particular module there's a CV, so you could actually use another module to vary or control that level, or you could just control it with the knobs and keep it as a static thing. Once you control the knob and set it to where you want, it would stay. That's the advantage of CVs or control voltages, is that you can control pretty much any control depending on the module and how it's set up by using a voltage from another module. So you can interrelate how those modules control each other, and it indirectly controls the sound, because, like, for instance, if you could use one to modulate and vary the tone using a CV. The audio is another chain, which is similar to any audio chain, where you might start with a source, go through an amplifier, you might have effects, and then in the end it comes out of the speaker, the amplifier. All right, so I'm going to turn this level back up here a little bit so you can hear it. And I'm going to go here to out, and I'm going to put this out to CV, and it stops the sound. This out is actually a CV as well. It's just an output. It puts out a signal, a voltage, to turn this on and off. Now the problem is we need a way to tell the ADSR to send a signal out of there. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to bring down this extra module, which is the MIDI CV module, which converts MIDI from our computer to CV and sends it out to various modules. So this gate over here is a CV, and so is this gate. And what a gate is it sends out a control voltage that just tells something basically to go on or off or whatever. So I'm going to take the gate from this one and connect it to this other one right here. And the other thing I want to make sure I set is, if I click on this top thing up here, I'm going to use computer keyboard, but we could use Windows MIDI. And if you had a keyboard device, you could go down here to the second thing and select a keyboard. For example, I have a keyboard right here, and that's just a standard MIDI keyboard. And if I hit that, you can see it makes a tone. But I'm going to switch it back to keyboard in case you don't have a MIDI keyboard and you're just starting to experiment with this. What you can do is you can just set it to the computer keyboard and use the QWERTY keyboard. So the QWERTY line of keys is now a keyboard. Now the problem is if we hit different keys right now, they all have the same tone. And this is regardless of whether we're using a computer keyboard or a MIDI keyboard. There's just one tone right now. And that isn't greatly useful either, although we can, if we only needed one tone, we could use that. We need a way to take that and to put it into notes and octaves and such. So if you look back on the first VCO right here where the V/OCT is, which stands for voltage octave, and this is a thing that actually creates voltages that are used to do tones and semitones or steps and half steps or notes, and it creates the frequency, or maps it to a frequency for the note basically. So if I click here and drop it on the V/octave up here, you'll now see the oscilloscope has a tone going there and to it, and if I hit any key, it will actually change the note. So this is basically your most basic setup for a analog synthesizer. You've got an oscillator, a VCO. You've got a VCA, a voltage-controlled amplifier, and you have an ADSR, which is used to create the trigger for the notes. And over here we have the MIDI interface, which is actually just so that we can interface the synthesizer, and we have the audio, so it goes out to the computer audio. But really the basis is a VCO, a VCA, and an ADSR, just to get the minimum that you would need for a synthesizer. All right, so now you have a synthesizer that you can change, and if I hold the key down, I can change the frequency on this, and you can see how it will get wider or lower. So the nice thing about using a scope is you can put a scope at different points in the chain, so you can see what's actually going on. So if we went and got another scope, I'm going to right click on here and click on the scope, get another one. I'm going to put that right here. So we have this additional scope here, and now if I go over to, if I hit Control and go over to here and put this into the Y, you see nothing, but when I hit a key, you see the sine wave appearing. So this gives you an idea of what the end result is. This is earlier in the chain, so it really more or less shows us what the wave signal is like. And as we add stuff to it, this is the final after everything's added to it. This is a basic synthesizer, so we have nothing added to it. All right, so I'm going to end this video right here, And in the next video, I'll go over what a VCF is, and which is a voltage-controlled filter, and I'll go over what an LFO does, which is a low-frequency oscillator, and how we can use those. And we'll get a little more complex of a set of modules and patches there to see how that works. But we'll start from this base patch here. Once again, throughout this video and throughout the videos I make after this in this series, I'm going to try to keep using the base modules, at least for the initial videos in the series, so it makes it easier for you to find them. Some people demonstrate this, and they demonstrate it really well, but they start pulling in modules that are third party, and when you want to recreate what they're doing, it makes it a little bit harder to find them and everything. This way, when you initially set up VCV, you don't even have to worry about adding the modules. I'm Mungo Darkmatter, and this has been Dark Matters. Whatever you do, enjoy making music, enjoy the day, and I will see you soon.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.